have been spending all morning researching WNBA salaries so you don't have to. And I hate to break it to you, but not only do WNBA players deserve more money, they're going to make more money. And the people who are, well, it's a charity league, well, they lose $50 million a year, are going to be very upset because it's going to happen. Before I get started, let me tell you all of the arguments against WNBA players deserving more money. Number one, they lost $50 million last year. People love that one. Number two, it's a poverty league. I mean, the NBA is literally paying for them to exist. And number three, no one cares about the WNBA, no one watches, and they should just go ahead and lower the rims so that people start watching the sport. The WNBA loses $50 million every year. How can the players deserve more money when the league doesn't even have any money? Yes, the WNBA reportedly lost $50 million last year, and that's because they had a shitty media rights deal, and that's where the league was at the time. However, now that the league has grown and they renegotiated their media rights deal, that number is quickly about to change. Not only that, with the $50 million loss, the WNBA is not a failing business. They throw that scary number at you to throw you off and think they're not making any money. No. The WNBA is a high growth startup, okay? Think every tech startup. If it's hard to think about, women playing basketball, every tech startup starts off operating at a loss. But do you think that stops them from paying their engineers what they're worth? No, because the engineers building that technology are the asset. People are throwing around short-term operation losses as if it makes the WNBA a failing business when that is simply not true. The NBA operated at a loss for over 30 years.
And the thing about the NBA operating at a loss for over 30 years is that all of the players had jobs after the season was over. That's where you get the whole narrative where guys was plumbers, or they say that, Wilt Chamberlain was playing against plumbers and all of these other things, is because they weren't paid and they didn't increase their pay until the league became profitable. That's when you started to see them. They were only superstars to the people. And they weren't even superstars until the Magic and Bird era, when they really started to blow up the league. And then it was after Magic and Bird that you started to see players really start to make a whole lot of money in the millions of dollars, and so on and so forth. And so when she says it's a high growth, high startup league, that is a very, very, very speculative term, because you have to understand that even in these startup ventures, a lot of times what happens is the engineers make much, much less than if you was to go over to Google, or you was to go over to Tesla, or you was to go over to another company, because what they did was they banked on the league and they took equity into the company. So if the company failed, then they failed too. If the company didn't make money, they didn't make money either. So you need people to understand the pay dynamics of how startups work in order to make the argument that it is a high growing startup venture. Do I consider the WNBA to be a league that is probably going to be profitable at some point in the future? Yeah, they're 25 years in, I believe, though. Something like 25, 26 years in, somewhere between 25 and 30 years in, and they still haven't been profitable, and they've lost hundreds of millions of dollars. The other part of that is that usually they have venture capitalists that also fund, and then they look to take the company public via IPO. It's called an initial public offering for the people that's not familiar. And what happens is they are able to generate a significant amount of revenue. Doesn't mean that the product is going to be profitable. You can still go out of business. But the venture capitalist invests in it and is willing to lose money, hoping that at some point it either gets acquired or they go public, and that the actual general public wants to invest in the company because they see the potential in it. And so the players asking for more money has nothing to do with whether or not they are losing money, as far as the NBA subsidizing it with whatever it is that they putting in. So she doesn't know what she's talking about in that lens. But let's hear the rest of her out. I haven't seen the rest of this.
Reddit operated at a loss of $484 million in 2024, and yet a director of engineering at Reddit can make upwards of $500,000 a year. How much do you think a WNBA coach makes? Thank you. The NBA isn't doing the WNBA a solid and paying them charity by contributing to their existence. The NBA owns 50% of the WNBA, and that's because they need them. The NBA needed the WNBA, which is exactly why it started, to generate interest in young girls in basketball. If you think that women and girls having an interest in basketball isn't valuable, well, take that up with the NBA, because they made that decision, not you. If you think that a $50 million loss is a lot of money to the NBA that made over $10 billion last year, they ball up $50 million and sneeze into it. That is less than what Steph Curry makes in a single season, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Bradley Beal. And keep in mind, the NBA owns 50% of the WNBA. They're simply investing in their own asset. So how much do they actually make? Well, a WNBA player on average brings in $102,000 a year before taxes. WNBA players should be grateful they're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to dribble a ball at a high school level. I hear that one all the time. So how much do WNBA players actually make? On average, a WNBA player makes $102,000 a year before taxes. That's pretty good money, right? But the league minimum is $66,000 a year to be a professional basketball player, mind you. And that is less than a livable wage in a lot of the cities that the WNBA operates in, including San Francisco, where the livable wage is $96,000. New York City, the livable wage, $85,000. Los Angeles, livable wage, $82,000. Kaitlyn Clark makes less than that. Like, guys, wake up.
Kaitlyn Clark makes the bulk of her money when it comes to endorsements. So if you guys want to make more money, then you have to make yourself more marketable. It still doesn't. Listen, you talking about a livable wage doesn't mean anything. It is a privilege to be able to do what you want to do here in the United States of America. You can choose any profession that you want. You can choose any city that you want to live in. If not, you should just go be like Sanaa Lathan and Love and Basketball and go get you a job. Nobody deserves anything. Everything that you get is earned. Do I believe that the WNBA players will probably make more money? Sure, I do. Do I think that that still justifies what it is that they're asking for, considering that they are losing venture until they become profitable? 100%. So her arguments are flat. Like it sounds cute, it sounds good on the outside, but again, it doesn't necessarily justify. Just because, listen. If I make $1 million a year on one venture, and I'm losing $50,000 a year on this other venture, you can't sit here and tell me that that's not meaningful to me just because I make $1 million a year over here. You can't tell me that it's justifiable that I have to continue to subsidize your lifestyle, that when you don't necessarily understand the dynamics of how it is that I'm balancing and I'm juggling these companies. I've been investing in this company for 25 years and I'm still losing $50,000 a year on this company. And so you sitting there coming to me and you don't have you don't have to work here. You don't have to do anything, and telling me what it is that I need to do with my money. You count my pockets is crazy to me.
Anton Daniels gets paid 6 times the WNBA's supermax salary. Be serious. Some NBA players like Steph Curry.
It's such a dumb argument to compare yourself to men in a profitable league. It is the dumbest argument ever. But, women don't lead with logic. They lead with emotion. And this is one of the reasons why they're in the situation that they're in.
Get paid over $588,000 per game. Kaitlyn Clark generated $36 million in income for the city of Indianapolis last year. And she's seeing $78,000 a year. It's not fair. Now, I want to make one thing clear. WNBA players should not be making even a fraction of what NBA players make because the league doesn't generate what the NBA makes.
Finally,
I'm not stupid. I'm a huge Steph Curry fan. Steph Curry might be underpaid for the value that he brings to the NBA. LeBron James, probably underpaid for the value he brings to the NBA, which is crazy to say for people making over $50 million a year, but they deserve that money, which is why the NBA pays their players 50% of all of the revenue that they make. That includes their jersey sales, their ticket sales, because at the end of the day, the asset for the NBA, what the NBA is selling, are the players.
That comes after something becomes profitable. I don't know why it's such a disconnect with women on understanding exactly how money works. Once something becomes profitable, that's when you can then start to renegotiate. But if you still have a bunch of stuff that you have to pay for, that accommodates WNBA players in order for them to be able to do what it is that they do, and you're still operating at a loss, I can't pay you more money than I have. Is that a hard concept? If you have to get on a plane in order to go somewhere, if we have to then make sure that we get this arena together, if you only got 13 teams in the league, you see what I'm saying? Like, you have to generate more revenue. Whatever. Let's hear some more. Let's see if she got anything else to say.
Just because WNBA players may not be as valuable as NBA players financially, let's talk business, does not mean a WNBA player isn't just as valuable to the WNBA as an NBA player is to the NBA. Actually, WNBA players are more valuable because there are much less of them.
Y'all let me know what y'all think inside of the comments. I always like to link back to the content creator in order to give credit. Make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. T Chanley, 40% off your first order plus 20% off for life.